bit about your engagement with this project and how it started for you, and what was the springboard for it?
I suppose springboard is a good word to use, Teresa. I suppose from our perspective, when you look at an area like Myras, I suppose it's synonymous with educational underachievements, social exclusion, all of the buzzwords they use when it comes to socioeconomic disadvantage. And the reality is, when you go back 10 years ago, like, despite the best efforts of people, like, you know, literacy was at a low ebb. You know, baseline was quite low within the school, and there was a lot of mitigating factors there. At the time, the area was imploding. There was huge issues around criminality, antisocial behaviour. Like, school was the last thing in a lot of people's minds around here, you know, and kids were coming to school with huge baggage. But that didn't, I suppose, abdicate us or excuse us in terms of our responsibilities to the kids. And at the time, Anya would have been principal, and I suppose we engaged with the DESH initiative. And again, that brought just a myriad of opportunities in terms of, you know, the reading recovery and the literacy lift-off. And I suppose things started to, there was we were on an upward curve, shall we say. And then with the Uscald Forum, again, which is, I suppose, a forum which enables principals from all the DESH schools to come together and to discuss and reflect on issues in a very safe, secure space that's facilitated through the regional office of the DES and obviously Mary I suppose people got talking. And at the time, you have people like Patricia Sheehan, you had Carmel Doherty, the DES inspector, you had Anne Higgins, and they listened. I think that was a key part. You know, we weren't just coming into a room and giving out. They were listening to the issues on the ground, and a massive issue for us at the time was literacy attainment. And, you know, around when the project started, it would have been about 2011, I think. Now, this must be its fifth year, I'd say. I think I'm right in that. You know, Ireland, I suppose, was at a low ebb. We were gone well past the Celtic Tiger wave. We weren't surfing that anymore. And to be fair to the DES, they took a punt on Limerick and brought in the ex-quota posts, the development of the literacy initiative, schools being given the ex-quota posts for literacy leaders. And from there, like, it has just blossomed. Like, we had obviously the ex-quota posts for the 5-year duration of the programme. We had the same teacher in situ for 4 years, and it's just been a fantastic experience, not just for the teacher who was in situ, but I think for the whole staff. Just the learning that was there, the reflective practice, the collaboration, the engagement. Just it has opened up so many opportunities for teachers and opened our eyes to the importance of the buzzwords that we hear now, like reflective practice and communities of practice and collaboration. They happen organically now on the ground. It's not been driven from the top down. It's happening, it's from the bottom up, really. When you go back to 2011, like Mary Fouhey would have been the literacy leader per se, or the literacy coach as they were called at the time. And I suppose Mary had a huge experience built up in terms of, you know, reading recovery, a lot of, I suppose, a long period in her professional career spent as a learning support teacher and a resource teacher. And she was seen as the expert. And as part of the initial process, there was open days organised where teachers from other schools would come in and see examples. I won't call them best practice, but good practice in schools. And I remember that at that particular time, the fear that was there. What do you mean teachers from other schools are coming in to look at us? What if it's not very good? But it was amazing to see the learning and the affirmation the teachers got when teachers from other schools came in. And they were just so affirming in terms of the work that was going on. And I would have heard similar things from other principals, teachers going to other schools, doors opening, teachers coming in for the first time, the fear that was there, but how that quickly dissipated when you saw the learning that was coming in a very non-threatening environment. And it's got to a level now, Teresa, where it's kind of par for the course, not just amongst DESH schools, but other schools would come in. I suppose we're fortunate to be part of the DESH process, so you have your literacy initiatives, you have your station teaching going to senior classes, and we've had schools from outside of, say, the non-DESH community coming in. And it's just so normal now, it's just par for the course. And in terms of collaboration within the staff, it's amazing just to see how teachers have become empowered. And again, it's not, I certainly don't think it's been driven by me. Obviously, I'm part of the process, but where you can have a Croke Park hour now, where there's peer reviews, peer learning around various DESH strategies. Say, for example, the First Steps programme, some of the teachers are having issues around the comprehension strategies, where other teachers will go away and research maybe an area where they have a certain skill or knowledge or strength, will come back and they'll actually model for other teachers particular ways of dealing with particular strategies. And it's phenomenal to see. And it's not done in a kind of a hierarchical way in this, I know this and I'm going to show you what to do, but it's done like, lads, I have an understanding here, I get this, I'll give you a bit of a dig out here with this, but I'm not so sure about this. maybe next week we might look at another strategy and you can help me out with regards to that. And I just think it's been really, really powerful, and that it's done within an environment where, you know, teachers don't feel threatened or undermined. We're doing this for the betterment of the kids. And even in terms of that collaborative learning and collaborative practice, when you look at how we're now, like, not saying focusing on data, but how data has become an important part of what we're about. And it's not that we want to be held accountable, but we actually now see that this can enhance outcomes for children. If we're focusing on data and we're looking at where the weaknesses are and where the strengths are, well, then it's going to add value to our teaching going forward. And it's fantastic just to see how teachers are now embracing that and working through that. And again, as I said, it's not about a reflection on a teacher. It's more about, well, how can we improve outcomes for these kids if there's particular difficulties? I think the literacy initiative has been a powerful conduit in terms of enhancing and developing how we operate within this school. It really, really has. You know, Mary I, the schools, they've worked together, and it's very much a collaborative model. Even the in-service that was provided, like, all the teachers came back, they were so enthused. Like, at the time, you know, you'd kind of what we call experts, but like individuals like Stephen Graham coming from Australia, you know, with a huge wealth of knowledge behind him, but was part of the process too. Like, none of the teachers came back saying, you know, oh, I didn't know what he was talking about. He was operating on a different planet to where we're at, or a different level. They all kind of got where he was coming from. And I think he had been so well versed in terms of where we were at and what was required, that it was seamless. From the in-service, it came back to the schools, and it worked so, so well. And that was, I think, right across the board with all the in-service. I think it was great too, at the in-services, a number of the teachers had already met through the open days. So again, you look at the community of practice. It wasn't just, say, within the school. It was a much wider community that was built up right across all the DESH schools, and continues to this day, because you would see with the likes of Mary and Annalise, who's currently in situ in the literacy post, they would have regular contact with teachers, and not alone the two girls, other teachers who would have regular contact with teachers in other DESH schools. They're kind of just shooting the breeze with regards to different strategies, different initiatives, ways of enhancing their programs of work. And again, even through the literacy initiative, more or less monthly, the literacy leaders, the literacy coaches, the ex-quota teachers, call them what you will, they meet on a monthly basis in the education centre. And even some of the information that comes back from those meetings, it's absolutely brilliant. Stuff that's going well in other schools. Well, if it's going well, we might go and see it. Teachers go from here to St Mary's, to Thomond, to the Galvone. It's a super, super process. It really, really is. And has really added huge value to what it is we're doing here on the ground, you know. For example, the open days, I think how they were, I suppose, formulated, how the process was brought to the school door, it was really, really well done. And it wasn't done it was done in a very non-threatening way. And I can remember because I was only new, said, to the principalship, maybe here about 6-7 months, maybe less, I'd say, when the initial open day we had, and you have the inspector are coming, there's people from Mary I coming, there's about 30 teachers coming. But it was so affirming from my perspective, but I think really from the teachers' perspective, because they were the people on the ground. I was just kind of coordinating the day and making sure everything worked well and everybody was fed. Whereas I think the teachers on the ground got so much from it, in terms of just affirmation of their work. And what was quite interesting was there was little, we call them symposiums, set up after each of the initiatives, in that all the teachers who observed the initiative came back here. Actually, it was this room here to the library, and the teachers that were involved in the initiative came back here as well. Sat down, had a chat about how the initiative developed, how it evolved, had a discussion what the teachers thought of it. Was there anything they thought, and it was great, like, it was thrown out there, was there anything you think we could do, additional we could do? But teachers were so, I think, affirming and so positive about what they had seen. It was really, really good. And similarly then, when we went to Thomond, when we went to St Michael's, the various other DESH schools, like, our teachers came back and they were just amazed at what was going on in the other schools, and again enabled us to add value, because none of us are centres of best practice. We all need to learn from each other, and the fact that there's a vehicle there that enables us to learn from each other, it's absolutely fantastic. It really, really is. There's an understanding and awareness of within the schools that we're not going to solve those problems on our own. We need to work together, and I think the project gave us the vehicle to do that in a very non-threatening manner. without a shadow of a doubt, informally, a lot of this was happening on the ground. But this provided us with a formal mechanism, and then it enabled us to feed back into the literacy initiative through the meetings that the literacy leaders were having, but also through the meetings that the principals were having on a kind of termly basis with the inspectorate, with Patricia from the DES, with Anne, like it just the whole process. And it, for a period as well, with obviously Joe O'Connell as well, who would have been for the Education Centre, and for a period, for the first couple of years, you had a coordinator that was based in the Education Centre as well. So just the whole process just ran so smoothly. But I would have found at the time, for me personally, I would have been relatively new to the principalship, a lot of issues on the ground. So I need to be here during the day. So that was one thing for me personally. Like I would have facilitated as many, a huge amount of the staff went, and like we would have doubled up, trebled up. There was stages I could have, there was days that I had 40, it was like the old days, 40, 45 kids in a classroom to enable other teachers to go. But that would be something, I suppose, that a regret of mine, that at the time I didn't get to very many of the sessions because I was back here kind of minding the ranch, shall we say, to facilitate, like from our vice principal right down, then junior infant teacher, 6th class teacher, resource teacher to learning support, they would have all been part of the process. But again, unfortunately, I didn't make very many of the sessions, so somebody had to mind the house.
Yes.
And I suppose that's a reality for us on the ground too, in that you are trying to balance the importance of CPD and enabling teachers to engage in that process while at the same time ensuring that the natural flow of the school day works. I suppose there's a number of ingredients that were brought to the table that have made a difference. I think behaviour management is a huge part of it for me too, and that has really enabled teachers to teach now. Like it is fascinating just to see the development in behaviour and the improvements in behaviour over the last 10, 15 years. From my perspective, you can never take your eye off the ball, and it's a very thin line, and it can regress very, very quickly. I suppose again, coming back to your original question, that would have been an issue for me, and I would love going forward. Again, this is me personally, but for that type of CPD, I'd have no problem doing that after school or weekends or a summer school. If there was scope there, I don't know. But for me, from a leader of learning or a school manager's perspective, it is very difficult to get away during the day. From talking to some other principals, they would have felt the same, that whilst you're there in body, you're not there in mind. The phone is going off, there's the secretary's ringing you, there's a problem with a child or a problem with a parent or whatever, you know, so you're not able to give it the full attention that it deserves. From the beginning, it wasn't about us having to fit into a process or a system. The system kind of wrapped around the school and met the needs of the school, which was, I think, you look at the in-service that was provided, you look at the expertise on the ground with regards to like the data analysis, the work that was done with regards to that. Like that's, I think, what made the difference. Like over the years, we've all been involved in CPD sessions that don't meet the needs of the school. I think every session, every engagement we had with the initiative, it was about the school, it was about the children, it was about improving outcomes for the children. And that's why I'd be so, I suppose, effusive in my praise of the whole process, because I just think it wasn't there was no specific agenda. We need to follow. It's a very linear, this is what we're doing. You know, this was about the school and what the school's needs were. And that's, I think, why it has made such a difference. But I suppose now it's about maintaining that now, you know, and a lot of work has gone into that. And without a shadow of a doubt, like the literacy initiative has played a huge role in that. It really, really has. Teachers are smarter now about how they do their business, and the fact that there's such a collaborative approach, and that, you know, it's not just about the way I do things, it's about looking at how I'm doing things, and if it's not working, you know, talking to my peers, working with my peers, even the work that teachers have been doing with the peer reviews through the Crow Park hours, absolutely fantastic. It really, really has. It's made a huge difference. You go to St Mary's Park, you go to Ballinacurra West, and you go to South Hill, all these areas that are synonymous with educational underachievement, and you see how the schools are starting to turn the tide. So it's powerful work, and without a shadow of a doubt, the Literacy Initiative has been an amazing vehicle to enable that to happen. parental involvement will be huge for me. Teresa, I suppose I spent 5 years as homeschool liaison here, and for me it's probably the most important job in the school. That link with the family is absolutely vital. You know, and I know we hear it all the time, it's enshrined in our constitution, the parents are the primary educators, blah de blah, but that is the reality. And when you look at the issues around mental health, criminality, they're absolutely huge, particularly around mental health. And the kids can't just park their baggage at the gate and come into school and be expected to engage with a curriculum. Like, we need to be supporting parents and engaging with parents. And there's phenomenal work going on around the city through the homeschool liaison scheme. And at this stage, like, homeschool liaison coordinators are like, they're quasi-social workers. What they're doing, it's absolutely incredible, the work they're doing. The scale of the needs is just off the charts. It really, really is. And I do think there's a huge piece of work there with regards to engaging parents. But it's all well and good, I'll say, ticking a box, we're engaging parents in a literacy initiative. I think we need to look at where the parents are at and how we support them. Like, for example, the Incredible Years programme, an amazing programme. We've had huge successes with it in terms of, say, the teacher classroom management programme, the Dine in the Classroom programme, the small group diner programme. But I suppose one area where we've had limited success is the parent programme. Now, I was trained up in the parent programme myself and ran it, must be 7 or 8 years ago now. And for me, the issue with the parental programme was, say, the Incredible Years programme is probably rung 2 on the developmental ladder. A lot of the parents aren't within 500 yards of the ladder. Like, there's so much pre-development work that needs to be done. And if there was, and even when it comes to like a literacy initiative, again, literacy is so far down the list of priorities for so many of the parents that we're working with. You need to deal with the domestic violence, the sexual abuse, the drug addiction, the mental health issues. And I'm not saying the school can do that on its own, but just to be cognizant of that there's so many other issues out there. And I suppose that's the key, how we crack that nut. And I know this is not a new problem, but for me it's the kernel of it really. Parental engagement and meaningful parental engagement, not just we have parents engaged in a particular initiative. Like, what are the outcomes? How is this making a difference long term to the outcome for both to the children and both the parents? So definitely parental engagement and programs that engage parents in a meaningful way. And it's not rocket science either, Teresa. We saw a program here. Again, due to funding, it ceased about 4 years ago. It's called Sponge Cakes and Spellings. And it was a very simple program that we piloted here with the VEC, where you had a trained literacy tutor, but she was also a trained confectioner. So she started a program here. We got a group of parents together. Vast majority of them hadn't completed junior cert. Some of them hadn't even completed primary school, to be honest with you. So there was huge issues there with literacy in particular. And what she did was she brought them in initially for a baking program. So every day every Wednesday they used 3 hours, 9:30 to 12:30 in the kitchen next door. They'd go away with something tangible, be it a tart or scones. But as the weeks went on, it became less about the baking and more about literacy. So rather than doing 2.5 hours of baking and a half hour of literacy, it was 2 hours of literacy and an hour of baking. But every week they still left with something, be it cupcakes or scones or whatever it was. But leaving here, as far as anybody else knew and the wider world knew, it was a cookery class. But as a result of them being engaged in a meaningful manner, and it worked just the way it was, the optics of it worked for them. It wasn't, I suppose, forcing them to deal head on with any of the hang-ups they had around early school leaving or literacy. A number of those parents went back and did their junior cert. Mm-hmm. And like you can see, particularly with 2 of those families, their eldest children now have just completed the junior cert. They're the first of their family that have ever done that. It was a very simple program, but again with very much a focus on literacy. So again, I don't think there's a need for huge investment to try and reinvent the wheel. I just think it's been a way, similar to what the Literacy Initiative did, being very aware of what the needs of the school are. And rather than coming in with this program that we're going to ensure the parents fit into, you create something bespoke that meets the actual needs of the client base that you actually have.